Right, welcome back to Wake Up Sierra Leone. Thank you for staying with us. We have a few more minutes to end the program, but before we close, we have our final segment in the show this morning.
Right, we've been joined in the studio by the Minister of Information and Communications, Mohammed Rahman Suare. Good morning and welcome to the show, Mr. Minister.
Good morning, good to be here.
Right, we have Alhaji Marcos Bangura, Executive Director, Citizens Forum for Democratic Accountability. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Good morning.
And both gentlemen are here to discuss the President's New Year's speech as he assured citizens of reviewing the 1991 Constitution, among other things. Let's start off with you, Mr. Minister. Many civil rights activists, many political players and development pundits have argued that if development is to actually rapidly take place in Sierra Leone, we first off have to start with the Constitution. And the President, in his New Year's statement, said that pretty soon the white paper would come out, and which would position Sierra Leone with regard to the constitutional review process. First off, tell us, has there been a committee set up looking at the review process?
Okay, so let us, first let me use this opportunity to extend the very best wishes to all Sierra Leoneans for 2022 and beyond. We realize the 1991 Constitution was a response to the experiences of the one-party Constitution of 1978. Right? So, I mean, it was not a perfect document, but it was what we had to grapple at the time with the challenges. I mean, we still had one-party hangover and all of those, various governments have set up constitutional review committees. There was the Peter Tucker one under the late President Kaba. He did a fairly good job. Then came in former President Nkrumah. He set up something like an 80-something member commission reflecting various shades of opinion to look at that document. Sadly enough, in spite of the billions we spent on that document as a country, in spite of that document, in spite of the richness of the views, elicited and gathered from across the country, I mean, the white paper, government, which is normally government's response to the recommendations, I mean, literally rejected all of the things that Sierra Leoneans across the country had said, thus, throwing into the winds the billions that had been spent. So Peter Tucker died a very unhappy man because what should have immortalized him was made nonsense of. President Biu, I mean, during the campaign, then retired Brigadier Biu, noted that if elected, he will ensure that he revisits the constitutional review and all of those things. So yes, he still has commitment to that, as reflected in his New Year message. Yes, what happened? Sierra Leoneans had spoken, remember? I mean, various shades of opinion were represented in the CRC, about 80-something member committee. Yeah, on a normal day, you could have said it's bloated. But for the exercise, considering the importance of the exercise, let us have it as it is. So, you did not need to get the same 80 or 80-something member committee again. A review has been done. Sierra Leoneans have spoken. Their very unjaundiced views were in the recommendations presented by the late Justice Kawan. So what this government did was to put together a subcommittee, a cabinet subcommittee, to review that. And out of that, a white paper will soon be published. That was what the president referred to. I've heard civil society and other people asking they were not represented. For God's sake, you have had your bite of the cherry. You were part of the 80-member committee that was formed. There are already recommendations. We simply wanted to look at it with a fine-tooth comb as a government so that we could release a white paper.
There were recommendations under the previous government. And civil society activists, the media, and other people were taken aback when some of those recommendations were kicked against because they felt that what the people had spoken during the review process were not reflected in what the government wanted to put out. And so CSOs are now saying, for us to avoid a repeat of that, why not have us in this subcommittee so that we know the views that have gone into the entire process are not kicked out?
Okay, so to those CSOs, we appreciate their continuing commitment to work with governments for the interests of the country. Yeah, but to those CSOs, I can only say this government is serious. This is a new day. This is a new direction. Already, even before the official release of the white paper, a whole lot of the things that have, that has engulfed this country since independence are now being resolved. Remember, we recently abolished the death penalty. They have spoken about some of the things we have already done. So we like to assure everybody that most of the things that serve the best interests of Sierra Leone will be reflected in the white paper.
In order to
however, they are recommendations. The things they talk about are recommendations. Government is not bound, does not have a gun to its head to implement all the recommendations. But for good, you have seen us take practical steps to do those things that governments before us have scared to do, things that governments before us have chickened out of. But this government will take the bold steps to do those frame-breaking reforms that will move this country forward.
So within this time frame, how consultative has the process been in terms of getting these civil society organizations and governance campaigners on board before the white paper comes out, so we don't have the same
Okay,
problems?
so even at the risk of repeating myself, I did say you already had recommendations, influenced by Sierra Leoneans across this country. Billions were spent on that, right? Those recommendations were the ones we looked at. Right? So it did not have any reason to set up another set of recommendations, another set of group, at taxpayers. So we basically looked at them, we reviewed them, and in the best interest of Sierra Leone, the white paper will reflect some of those ones that government has accepted, and that will be published in coming days.
All right.
Just before bringing Marcus, again, I just quickly, out of curiosity.
No.
When you, now the president has called some of you guys, the cabinet members, and said, okay, let's look at this, and let's say, and government, you just mentioned, is not bound to implement all of those recommendations.
Yeah.
But what's in a situation where almost all of those recommendations are from the people, and we want this constitution, the new constitution, should it come to bear fruit, would be the people's constitution. How would you, the cabinet members who are part of that committee, ensure that the views of the ordinary Sierra Leoneans who were spoken to at Falaba, at Kainlaung, are reflected in the
well, already, even before issuing the white paper, we've started reflecting those, we've started implementing those views of people from Falaba, from Pujong, from Karine, from Kainlaung. They have been saying they wanted the criminal libel repealed, right? That was done without having to wait for a white paper. The death penalty has been abolished without having to wait for a white paper. The gender empowerment bill is in progress without having to wait for a white paper. So that means this is a listening and progressive government, right?
All right. Marcos, let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, let me also take this opportunity to congratulate Sierra Leoneans because we made it to 2022, irrespective of the turbulent year. We need to appreciate God for that. And we say glory to God about that. In respect of the constitutional review process, of course, a constitution is a sacred document, and it is very, very important that we have a constitution that reflects the heart and minds of Sierra Leoneans. It is very, very important that we have a constitution that should be consistent, that should be certain, and hemmed with publicity. Because when you talk about law, for it to be well recognized, the issue of publicity should be made so that each and every individual be mindful of it. And of course, the 1991 Constitution, just as the minister put it, came as a result of the 1978 one-party Republican Constitution, which, among other things, was not in conformity with multi-party system. So we say that the 1991 Constitution is a multi-party constitution. That's the name of it. Because it was the time that we have political parties coming together and participating competitively. So when we talk about the constitutional reform, the former government did very little or nothing to actually put it into effect because of the fact that billions of leones, say, for example, were spent on it. And at the end of the day, we are expecting that we'll have a constitution that is amended. Because the reason why constitutions are changed or amended is to meet changing times. You know, to meet changing times is very, very important. So that is why most times it is but prudent that the constitutions are amended. But irrespective of that, at the end of the day, with the finances put on it, we did not see a situation wherein the 1991 constitution was amended or promulgated, a new constitution promulgated, so that we have one that is good. That is not to say that the 1991 constitution was not a good one, because if you look at the West African region, you know, before we had the 1991 constitution, Ghana has its own constitution. And when you make comparison, our 1991 constitution was good. But just as I've put it, to meet changing times, it has a lot of lacunas. When you look at the 1991 constitution, even in my book that is being used in schools, A1 for senior secondary school, I did a breakdown of constitutional developments from 1863 to 1991. And 1991 constitution, I did a proper breakdown of it. So there are a lot and lot of issues around
the
it.
problems with the 1991 constitution, I mean, we've always, we've talked about them over and over again. But you mentioned earlier that the issue of constitutional review has to do with publicity. It must be well publicized. So if you go back to the 80-man committee that was set up by former President Ernest Bai Koroma, it was well publicized.
Yes,
it went across the country. I mean, the committee went across the country. They spoke to almost every Sierra Leonean to just get their views and all of that. But at the end of the day, you said it was almost nothing because we did not realize that. The issue about taking this constitution when the subcommittee would have come out with a white paper and adopted, and taking the constitution to a referendum, Sierra Leoneans would not be asked, do you want this chapter or this chapter in the constitution? They'll just ask them yes or no with the new constitution. And whether there are bad things in it, for many, I'm sure it will be yes, because they want a new constitution. So how then do we ensure now that this subcommittee ensures that the things in the white paper that they would publish, and at the end of the day take that document to the Sierra Leoneans during referendum, are part of what the people want?
Yes, I was coming to that, right. The decide
Not be your role now as CSOs, especially when, I mean, the recommendations are in public. Should that not be your role now to come to the public and let them understand and know what these recommendations are?
Yes. This is the business of government. It is for all of us. It is incumbent upon government to get in touch with CSOs to do that, especially CSOs like us that do public education. Quite recently, the minister organized a program in Bo, and there was representation as well as consultation. And it was received with open hands all over the place. And this is quite different to some extent to this subcommittee that government has established. And for us to talk about a white paper coming now, wherein people know very little or nothing about the recommendations, despite the fact that recommendations have been made, there is a proclivity that government might have add some recommendations or even remove some recommendations. You understand? That's why I said the APC and SNP are two sides of the same coin. You understand? Because there must have been reasons, whether selfish reasons or whatever, as to why the former government did not pass it into law. You understand?
In your view, what was the reason?
I said perhaps there might be reasons,
messages.
you understand? So the same might apply to this present government. So that is why it is very prudent for them to at least link with civil society, not only civil society.
So this is what I asked before. How consultative has the process been after the recommendations have been made? So at least civil society organizations know perhaps what recommendations are priority for the government and which ones aren't, and which ones, you know, the public would need education on, because this is all part of the constitutional review process.
I understand. I mean, this is a very consultative and collaborative government. You know, in the history of this country, we now have a standing arrangement whereby government parleys and dialogues with civil society organizations, even in very uncomfortable circumstances. So we're a very consultative government. But like I was saying, these consultations have already happened. The recommendations are available. It is the recommendations that were reviewed. Once we publish it, that is a great opportunity for collaboration with civil society, particularly like Marcus mentioned. They are in public education, and I recognize that you have a lot of them in public education. We will now sit with them, right, and work together to ensuring that we put boots on the ground in every nook and cranny of this country so that our people get to know the goodies in the white paper. But more importantly, you know, Samuel, there was something you raised that I probably need to throw some light on. The referendum, I mean, once a white paper is published, some of the issues are clearly issues for a plebiscite, a recommendation, a referendum, if you like. So it is not the whole document that will be presented. For example, the issue around the separation of the offices of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice might be one of those issues, and it might be put to a referendum for people to vote yes or no. So it is not the whole document that will be holistically voted on. There will be clear issues that are entrenched provisions in the Constitution. Those are the ones that will be subject to a referendum. There are some others, you know, which can be passed by replacing those ordinary laws.
All right. Well, thank you so much for making time to speak to us this morning.
Interestingly, I mean, we're going to Cameroon, and we hope for the very best. Fortune favors the brave, and we believe that our guys are very much brave, and to bring back that.
Well, we wish Leon Stars all the best. Good luck to the team. We can't wait for us to bring the cup home.
For Tuesday, right? when we play our first match. Yes.
It's been a good start. The team has reciprocated government's goodwill. Governments invest unprecedented investment in football and other sporting disciplines. We'll all be with them. They might have 11 men on the field, but be sure they will have a lot more than 11 men. We have to, like His Excellency said, we will ensure that the ball hits the back of the net.
All right. Thank you so much for making time, and good luck to Leon Stars. Well, this is where we end today's edition of the program.
Yes, wake up Sierra Leone. But quickly, our quote for today says, "We cannot turn the clock back, nor can we undo the harm caused, but we have the power to determine the future and to ensure that what happened never happens again." And it comes from Paul Kagame, Rwandan president.
Right, with that, we say thank you to our sponsor, Rokel Commercial Bank, for their support through the program, and to you out there, continue to watch AYV throughout the day as we have other exciting programs coming up on Channel 33, Channel 399 on DSTV. Till we meet again, my name is Antonia Howard.
And I am Samuel Wise-Bangwe saying many thanks for being part of the show.
much.